Yes, I am on.
Good evening, Mayor. How you doing?
Great. Good evening. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Bless you, sir. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Looking forward to this conversation. We're gonna have a good time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know it's about to be 4 o'clock. Are there any instructions that we need to know before we go live?
I'm waiting to hear from Sister Bryant.
Okay.
I'm
Did you get
not sure. Go ahead.
did you get the questions? Did all of you
I
get the
did
questions?
questions. Yes.
You got
Hmm.
it. Did you get it, Pastor JD?
Yes, I did. Yes, I
Okay,
did.
cool. All right, so then we're and Mr. Mayor Wholeness.
Yes.
Okay, then we're good to go.
And I think that I see that the sheriff's trying to come on now as well.
Okay.
Let me text Sister Bryant and make sure so we could, I guess, some fluidity in terms of them being in the building. And that's
Yeah, and just be conscious. I feel like we're live based on how I'm seeing the video at the upper left. It appears that we're live.
afternoon, South Florida Federation and viewers, supporters. We are happy to be here this afternoon on a Let's Talk discussion with our special guest today. We are so excited to be here with our Mayor Holness, as well as Sheriff Tony, and also our very own Pastor Doggett. We invite you to participate by sending any questions that you may have in the chat, and prayerfully we'll be able to get with them. Also, I am so excited about the discussion, A Call for Change. And we are excited as we move forward in this Let's Talk discussion, talking about some of those things that we can do to make a difference, to make change a reality, as well as making footprints in our community. I am going to push back a little bit this afternoon and allow for the younger generation to pose questions to our mayor and the sheriff, as well as Pastor Doggett. And so at this time, we will open the floor for our first question. Go ahead, Pastor Doggett or Elder Ricardo.
Sure. I'm excited, by the way, to be a part of this conversation. Mayor Holness, Sheriff Tony, we're glad that you're here, and we're looking forward to just hearing from you. So this is a privilege and an honor. Again, all of you esteemed panelists, we're excited. I'm excited to be here. The heights to which I aspire, the likes of which I admire. So I'm looking forward to us having a good conversation. The first question that I wanted to pose is actually a question for our mayor. Mayor Holness, if you don't mind unmuting your mic and answering this question for us. The first question is, what top 2 or maybe 3 issues do you believe that the 13,000 plus Adventists who are located in Broward County could be mobilized to effectively address? What 2 or 3 issues can we as a specific body address during this time in helping our community?
Criminal justice reform will be at the top of the list. Economic justice and empowerment, and political empowerment. And those 3 go hand in hand as issues that we face that are bundled together. They're not really separated. In terms of criminal justice, what we see in Broward County in the state of Florida is a large number of Black people who are being arrested. Juveniles that are arrested in Broward County account for 65% Black. 65% of the juveniles that are arrested are Black in Broward County. That's Broward. As a Black man, I'm twice as likely to be stopped for not wearing a seatbelt than a white person. In Florida, just under 17% of the population is Black, yet 50% of the people in prison in Florida are Black. If you go before a white judge and you're Black, you're likely to get 20% longer sentence than if you're white for the same crime. And if we look on the economic side of the ledger, you'll find that in Broward County, Blacks' household income is $42,000 compared to Hispanic at $54,000, whites at $74,000. 38% of the children living in Broward County live in poverty. Black children live in poverty, compared to 30% of whites and 14% of Hispanics. So there's a huge problem that as a society we need to address and deal with. And I'll give some solutions if you want now or later.
Sure. If you could feel free to maybe just share with us as a group how we can partner with you in trying to see these areas be affected in a positive way.
Okay, so let me offer this because it probably could be extensive and take a bit of time. I'll ask your viewers to look at BrowardBlackElectedOfficials.com, BrowardBlackElectedOfficials.com, and you'll see 8 areas of life that we lined out: political, economic, criminal justice, health, education, employment, transportation, and housing. And look at some of the issues we have there, the disparities that exist, and some of the solutions we put forward. Let me say, in terms of criminal justice and criminal justice reform, One of the big things that I've been able to do is pass a couple of things. One, a civil citation program that's still not yet fully taken up by our police department. What does a civil citation program does? It started with the state for juveniles, and we've now expanded in Broward County for adults. Not every community have it for adults. A lot of community have it for juveniles. And what that does is this: for minor misdemeanor offenses, rather than arresting someone and putting them in jail, where it costs us $161 a night, we then find a pathway that can bring resources to them and get them to pay a penalty, a price, but actually guide them along the way. Oftentimes when we look at juveniles that gets in trouble, there are usually problems in the household, whether it be high poverty, drug abuse, physical abuse, mental problems that are there. And just locking up someone for that is not going to solve the problem at all. What we found is this, that when we put juveniles through the civil citation program, we have a 90% successful completion and a recidivism rate that is very low. That means a low percent, less than 2%, actually end up going back in the system. Because what we do is this: we say, look, there are penalties that you pay, but we're also going to bring resources to your household. If there are issues there with abuse, whether it be mental or physical, then we bring resources. If there's addiction there, then we'll bring resources. If there's need for employment opportunity and poverty, we bring some resources to that. But in the meantime, young man, young woman, here's a process that you got to go through. You have to follow these steps and complete this program so that we can help you build yourself. So that's a big part of what I think we need to do more of in Broward County. Now, the Sheriff's Office has embraced that. But I can tell you this: most other police departments are not utilizing it. We move that also to adults, and a similar result can occur there also. Why are we locking someone up in jail for shoplifting $100 and keeping them there for $161 a night and offering a bail maybe of only $100? They didn't have $50 to begin with. How are they going to find $100? So they stay there. We've fixed that to some extent in Broward County. But we can do better than that, than what we've done there. In terms of economic justice, we got to look to see how we get small business, minority and women-owned businesses, especially Black businesses, opportunities to grow and develop so they can hire their own. When you look at an unemployment rate at any given time in this country, in this community, you're going to find that Black unemployment rate is more than double white unemployment rate. You find Black poverty rate higher as a percentage of the population compared to others also. So one of the solutions we need to look at, and you can start right in your church, is to start businesses, start entrepreneurship, because then you hire yourself and you hire your friends and your family, and nobody can tell you you can't. We end up being last hired and first fired. Why? Because we don't own the jobs. We got to go beg someone else for the job. So when we build our own, and I would say to all of the churches, and there's a question further down about what you can do, all the churches should have a program where they're encouraging entrepreneurship. You should have a list of all your businesses and directing them there. I started a Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce as a result of wanting to do this in the city of Lauderdale. I'm now also a founding member of the Broward Black Chamber of Commerce. And that's a place that you can go to help with resources. More governmental contracts. So you want to talk to your governmental entities to ensure that the tax dollars that you pay into the system don't go with some rich company that's been around for 100 years, mostly owned by white males, but that you look to see how you can bring women and minorities and Blacks into the fold to get opportunities there also. Political empowerment is the other item I addressed. And young people, you ought to be registered to vote and engage in the political process. The more of us who are engaged, the better community we have, the stronger government we have in the local, state, and federal government. Research has shown that the more people who participate, the better it is for most people. They're not just a small group who are wealthy control the system, but others also become a part of it. In Broward County, I've been pushing that very hard. And proud to say that I was a part of a major effort that this year, this August, that just passed, saw Wakanda Village in Broward County, where we got 5 of the 6 countywide elected officers elected Black people. 5 of the 6 countywide offices in Broward County are now, nominated or already fully elected. the clerk of the courts, the public defender, the state attorney, the sheriff who's on with us, and the supervisor of elections. 2 of those positions are pretty much done. The other 3 are much there on the way there also. The sheriff's not going to lose because it's a Democratic county, and he's a Democrat, contrary to what some folks might want you to believe differently. And he will be elected. The supervisor of elections also will be elected because he's a Democrat, and the public defender, the state attorney, Harold Pryor, 33 years old, bright young man, has a bright future for us in leading that department. That's a major law enforcement power in the county in terms of charging police or not charging police, in terms of charging in black youths as adults or not, as is the case right now. The previous state attorney was elected at 35 years old, Mike Satz, and he served for more than 40 years.
Wow.
Yes. So maybe we can get Harold to serve at least 40 years also. And I'll rest for a moment. There's a lot more, I'm sure.
Very good. Well, you've done a great job in offering us some practical ways to engage and to help. And just on the heels of your commentary, I would love it if we could take just a moment to pray as we're continuing this conversation. We want God's blessing over it, as well as his help in activating us to not merely just talk about what you just mentioned, but to respond to the offering that you just provided for us to help. Let's pray. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we're grateful for this opportunity you've given us to discuss how we can be change agents in our sphere of influence. We thank you for the leadership that is at the helm. We're praying that you would provide guidance, and that you would, even as a result of what we discussed today, that you would use us to affect change, positive change in our county. We love you. We say thank you. In the name of Jesus, we pray this prayer. Amen and amen.
If I could interject, Pastor, Sheriff Tony, I have a question for you. If we could kind of draw you into the conversation. The question is asked, what are the top 2 or 3 issues concerning crime and social justice that you're currently focusing on or you want to develop over the next 2 to 5 years?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And the mayor always kicks these things off spot on because he's been in the game for a long time. He's been one of our local officials, and he's deeply rooted in all the issues related to bringing justices into Broward County for Black people. And I will tell you, looking at what I've had to step into, one of the key things that we're focused on from crime concerns is we've had some minor spikes in violent crimes over the last few months. Much of it has been a byproduct of COVID-19 and increases in parties, and we've handled that. Broward County, traditionally, the number 1 crime that we face here, I've been in this county now in terms of serving in law enforcement almost 15 years. It's always property crimes, burglaries. But those things are easily mitigated with task force personnel. The greatest issue we have right now, quite frankly, is to ensure that we bring balance to an organization here at the Broward Sheriff's Office and a system within the criminal justice system that is plagued with systemic racism, institutional racism, and a lot of injustices when it comes to minorities, specifically Black and brown people, being given an opportunity to rise in positions of power, to be able to become the sheriff. I'm the first sheriff and Black sheriff in 105 years. I'm the 17th sheriff of this organization. Broward County is a minority majority community. And it took a tragedy for me to be appointed. And then I had to come in here and step forward and produce my own merits in order to win the primary. But let's think about that. Would this opportunity have been here if not for a tragedy in Parkland? I'm not really sure. And so what we've been able to accomplish in terms of social justice issues have come directly from my administration because, look, I understand what's going on out there. The mayor and I have been on quite a few debates, and you've heard me say this repeatedly. I've been the sheriff now for 20 months, right? I've been Black for 41 years. And so there's no discounting the injustices and discriminatory practices that I've lived and had to deal with. And it ain't over. I'm still dealing with some of it. But the difference here is that I'm the chief law enforcement officer for this entire agency. Half the public safety responsibilities fall under the sheriff's office. And so we put all the advanced training protocols in place when it comes to safety and security, and we'll continue to expand that. But what about social justice? What about the reform elements? We introduced things here to start mitigating the unnecessary use of force in killing of by law enforcement officers amongst Black and brown people in this county. To begin with, we all learned from George Floyd's murder, his brutal murder up there where he was choked out for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that it is important to hold law enforcement officers accountable early and not wait till they have their 16th, 17th, 18th opportunity to kill a Black person in this community or therefore in this country. I knew that before George Floyd. We've had our own set of incidents here in Broward County under my command. And one of the first things we went out and did was to introduce an early warning system where now we track and monitor all the use of force cases across all my districts. And we put a second set of eyes in there to make sure if a deputy shows or exhibits signs that he's on his third or fourth time where he or she is constantly being excessive or the application of force doesn't make sense. That's our opportunity to snatch that deputy, put them in remedial training, transfer them out, or even terminate them before someone is killed. I also had to look at the culture of what the agency had grown to be acceptable. And I noticed we have something here called a Professional Standards Committee. The Professional Standards Committee has been around for 30 years in this agency. Every sheriff gets to pick their body of personnel. It's a combination of law enforcement and civilians. And that committee is supposed to sit and look at an internal affairs investigation and say, hey, Sheriff, we think you should suspend this person. Sheriff, we think you should terminate this person. Sheriff, we think this person should be reassigned. Whatever that recommendation is, and then I or the sheriff makes the final decision. When I walked into this organization, the Professional Standards Committee wasn't on my plate as a priority to reevaluate or change, but I watched it. I took a close look and said, let me see what these people are going to recommend. And I was very disappointed. Beginning with, we had a incident where one of our deputies was captured on his own body-worn camera, beating a man in handcuffs in a hospital. And that Professional Standards Committee selected by my predecessor said, we'll just suspend him for a couple days. It's one of the most egregious things you can do is to beat someone in handcuffs. To me, that's a no-brainer. You're gone, you're fired. And so I said, okay, I got to keep my eyes on this Professional Standards Committee. Then we had the DeLuca Road case in Tamarack, 15-year-old Black male, face slammed into the ground for sake of disorderly conduct, something that could be a ticket or a minor offense, and moved on. That exact same Professional Standards Committee said, the deputy should be exonerated. Exonerating means no disciplinary action should be taken. Thumbs up, he was in compliance. I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I had to terminate that employee as well, going against the Professional Standards Committee. And then that was enough for me. I removed the entire Professional Standards Committee, and I said, we're going to start fresh. We're going to interview and select the law enforcement partner, people that are going to sit here and represent me and represent this organization. We're going to diversify to put more Black and brown and women on this Professional Standards Committee. And we're not just going to select any old random person off the street to come in as a civilian and be bullied by the unions who often control the Professional Standards Committee. It turned into the blue wall, protect the cops at all costs. I brought in several Black attorneys, prominent attorneys that worked at the U.S. attorney level, an employment labor management specialist who served Broward County for a long time, Black woman, been here for quite some time. And I said, who better to be a chairman than a judge? I hired Julio Gonzalez, a Dominican brother who has been in this county for a long time, who I knew had a strong moral integrity and mirrored what I have in terms of expectation. And we instantly start seeing an evolution there. But we also did something only a few months ago where we partnered up with the FBI. The FBI has a now use of force review database where they collect all the use of forces that an agency would voluntarily submit, track it, provide criticism, critiques, or even recommendations about what we could do or do better. We're the first agency in Broward County to sign up. The mayor already talked about how it is difficult to get all our law enforcement organizations on the same page with the civil citation, but it's also with these type of levels of transparency. I don't have to wait for them. I'm going to keep moving forward, and I'll put the pressures on them as well. Another thing that we did in terms of, I have no problems with holding people accountable and have to terminate them. But terminating someone is retroactive. That means the bad act has already happened. Somebody's been hurt, somebody's been harmed. God forbid, somebody has already been killed. You can't wait for that. So we started looking at what is the cultural issues going on out here? Why is it that we have so many conflicts between white officers and young black men in the communities that's leading up to brutal murders? Talked about the cultural issues, the disconnect, not understanding what it is to be black in America. I spoke to a roughly 25-year-old deputy that worked for me, young lady, been here for a couple years, and she never heard of Jim Crow. This is something that's serious. To not know about the racial injustices that occur here in the United States is part of the problem. We have to be able to educate. Now, the mayor and Kim Campbell had worked on racial equity and implicit bias training. They offered it to this organization several years ago. It was denied. It was a simple request I think the mayor and his team had for about $25,000. And it was no from the previous administration. Having grown up in the inner cities, having a knee on my neck, been slammed on the ground, and all type of injustices growing up in Philly and even being here in Florida, there was no way I was going to ignore the importance of that training. We started out with $500,000, and I mandate that training for all of my employees, all sworn personnel. But then I challenged taking the mayor point in perspective that we're only as strong as our weakest link. And so I called all the chiefs of police and said, listen, here's what I'm doing at the Broward Sheriff's Office. We support your organizations when you're in stress and when you're in need. You all need to participate in this program. Your men, your women need to be trained in this same racial equity and implicit bias training. And what I did was to go from $500,000 to commit $1 million. So there is no excuse for any law enforcement officer in this county to have this training unless their administrators walk out of this deal. Now, other things that we are doing, the community, I talk about the importance of, if you're going to be an elected official, don't just listen to your community, actually hear what they're saying, because those two things are totally different. My mother used to scream that at me when I was a kid. I didn't understand it then, but I most certainly understand it now. Oftentimes our political leaders will listen, but they actually don't hear what you're saying because they don't take any actions towards it. And we learned quickly after the George Floyd murder that so much of the community wanted to be involved. I called everybody in here, Black Lives Matter, civic groups, and we had a nice powwow about what can we do to move this community forward, earn the trust back by both black, brown, and anybody else that's had any injustice against them. First thing came up was, Sheriff, we want to be involved. You should have like a social justice task force. Well, guess what? Under our neighborhood support team, we just launched our social justice task force a few days ago. And it's combined with leaders from Black Lives Matter movement, former law enforcement officers, Children Protective Services, and I can go on and on and on. This is going to help us learn about the issues that are occurring in the community and not waiting for bad things to happen. So I know I gave you a long spiel, but look, I'm very, very passionate about this. And I have to say this, young people, listen, it is absolutely important that these organizations look and sound like you and are reflective of Broward County at the top. I may be the first black sheriff, but we've done a lot of things to change the culture up here. My number two man, the number two in command of this organization, is a black woman. She's been here 23 years. I promoted her, Nicole Anderson. Our entire command staff is comprised of Hispanic, black, white, and our conversations are different because we understand it. This isn't a good old boy system. There isn't just a Knights of the Round Table dominated by just white older men. Those days are over. And so when the mayor talks about empowering yourselves and engaging in elections, most certainly understand that if you want your voice to be heard, you have to educate yourself up on the people who are doing things that benefit you, that benefit this community, and doesn't ostracize you. Because that has happened here for a very long time. And I'll pause because y'all get me all fired up. We start talking about this stuff.
Pastor Doggett, if I could just jump in again, I want to kind of throw you in the mix. I think we can kind of go full circle here. For those Adventist folk who are watching right now, and they're questioning whether or not this conversation should take place. Should we be involved with politics? Should we be involved with social justice? As a man of the cause, what do you say to that? What is your response to that?
So this is a question for me you're asking?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you for asking me this question. By the way, all of what has been mentioned has been absolutely, it's been music to my ears. I think what we're doing is we're talking about relevant issues. And if I could answer your question succinctly, I'll say this, because I think your question was, is it appropriate for us to be engaged in politics/social justice? Correct. Not only would I say it is appropriate, I would suggest to you that it is wrong. It is egregious. It is absolutely inappropriate for you not to be engaged, for you to be sitting silently in complicity on the sidelines while so much is happening around you. As a Christian, it is actually your duty to be engaged in social justice and politics. No, I'm not merely talking, because there's a long list here. I'm not merely talking about you voting, which I think is of the utmost importance. You have to vote. What the sheriff just mentioned, you got to make sure people look like you and represent you in these positions of authority. So please vote yes. But in addition to that, I think it's godly to also run for office. You don't just have to vote for people. We all should run for office. If we go through the Bible, because I think you're asking me this because I'm a pastor, so let me go ahead and bring in some Bible in this. One of the suggestions I'll give you is that when you look through the Old Testament, you'll notice that there are a number of different individuals who God positioned in political places of authority to help with these issues that we are facing. When it comes to people asking whether or not I should be at home praying about the issue, but not engaging in being an agent of change, let me tell you what that is. You're using prayer as an excuse to be seated like a statue on the sidelines. And I'm telling you that that is wrong. If you want to be like Jesus Christ, isn't that what Christians are, right? We are supposed to be like Jesus. Look at what Jesus did. One thing I notice is that most of what I read about is not Jesus hiding inside of a synagogue, teaching his disciples how to be disciples in the form of a program or a seminar. You know how Jesus discipled the disciples? And I'm sorry, I get passionate about this. He took them out of the sanctuary on the road of service, helping people in the community. That's how he grew them, how he taught them. He did not sit them in a seminar setting and say, let's open up the scripture from the Old Testament and let me explain to you these theological concepts that have nothing to do with the activation of your action and the employment of your volition to go out there and do something about what we see happening. So, I mean, I'll just kind of digress because I can go on and on. You have Daniel in the Old Testament who was in a political position. You have Joseph. You have the 3 Hebrew boys. You have Nehemiah. Let me tell you that Nehemiah could never have gone back to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem had he not been in a position where he could even ask the king for some help and for some assistance. I'm telling you that being in these positions is not an ungodly thing. It is a godly thing. Everybody wants to pray for an Esther to show up. Why don't you be the Esther? Why don't you be the person who will help effect change? That's why I'm so appreciative that our mayor, that our sheriff they're here to answer these questions, because I think that we should be engaged in dialogue. We should be interested in the social injustices that we see, the civil unrest that we see, and we should absolutely, as the sheriff and the mayor have just declared, we need to hold our leaders accountable. And one of the ways you do that is not by complaining about what they're doing within the secrecy of your domicile, within the seclusion of solitude. No, you engage, you have conversations. These are people. Do you hear the mayor talking? Do you hear the sheriff talking? These are down to earth people who have positions of authority, yes, but they care about your opinion. They care about your position. And guess what? You have power because you can vote. And we need to exercise the power to not just vote, but to also be engaged. So the answer, I don't know. Again, let me slow down. The answer is unapologetically yes. It is absolutely appropriate for us as Seventh-day Adventist Christians to be engaged in politics and to be engaged in, of course, seeing those social justice issues that were just mentioned by both the mayor and the sheriff. We need to see these things through. We should not just complain about them in church. Oh, man, let's pray about it. Do more than pray about it. Get up off your knees and pray while you're walking, being the change agent that God calls you to be. Be the salt, be the light. Come on. There's too much scripture for me to quote. So I don't mean to act like that's a silly question, but honestly, it comes across as being a very silly conversation that I have with Christians who suggest that all you should do is pray. My suggestion is that prayer is the beginning, not the end. So yes, be engaged.
Catherine?
Yes, I wanted to add one more scripture since he was dropping them. The verse that says, seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. I mean, the word of God is so clear in regards to what we need to do as people. And the first of that verse saying, seek justice. And in addition to some different parts of the Bible that have shown where God has called us to be involved, I mentioned before about the Good Samaritan and his actions when he saw someone on the side of the road. There were those who continued to walk to do their godly business, and then there was one who made it his godly business to help the person on the side of the road. And that is who the Lord affirmed and called and said that is what you should emulate, and that is the type of behavior that you should duplicate. So in terms of like what we're called here to do, and Pastor JD just mentioned, be salt. Salt is a part of the food. Okay, if salt isn't in the food, it doesn't really make sense just to put salt in your hand and lick the salt. The salt has got to be in the food. It enhances the meal that you are eating. And so we are here to enhance this world and make it a better place. It doesn't really make any sense to just keep the salt separate from the meal and hope that it helps the meal. That's not the goal here. All right.
Audrey, do you want to add to that?
Right now, I'm just taking it all in. I just appreciate everybody that's on this call right now. I just learned about my salt. No, I'm just really enjoying everything and all the dignitaries that are on right now. I'm just sucking it all up. So my comments are coming, but I'm good for now.
Can I jump right back in? And I'm not going to be long with this. We have leaders who are on the call right now. If we want to see what the mayor is talking about and what the sheriff are talking about, to go from concept to reality, to go from some revelation to manifestation, then we have to help them. Like, one of the reasons why it gets real difficult for leaders in particular to see a lot of what they want to see happen is because oftentimes the people who agree with them and who would love to see the same things take place aren't exercising their right to go out there and vote and support the leaders that are seeking to do these things. So one of the reasons additionally that I'll give is that in that we need to be engaged is so we can help these individuals and these leaders beyond merely praying for them. We need to help them and support them in multiple ways, one of which is voting, another of which is having these conversations to find out practical things we can do. So yes, in order to see change, y'all, it does not happen through osmosis. It happens through us galvanizing our resources, pooling our resources, and doing what we can to help the leaders who are in these positions to get done what they need to get done. I've had too many conversations, and you all know I was hired by the United States Congress for 2 years, working as a pastoral liaison to Congresswomen in Texas. And one of the things I noticed is that whenever we call for a lot of the churches, and again, this is a conversation that we're having with a good majority of our viewers being Adventist Christians, I had many invitations that I issued to a lot of these agencies and these bodies, these churches, to help with these politicians to get done what they want to see get done. But it's very difficult. It actually pains me to see these leaders having great agendas, having great plans, but it's difficult when the ones they're fighting against are the only ones who show up to vote, the only ones who are there to support the opposition. We need to be there beyond our words. We need to be there with our actions to help support so that we can see these things come to fruition. It doesn't happen through osmosis, and prayer does work, but guess what? God uses you as the answer to that prayer. So yes, we got to support these men and these women in these positions.
And that's the beauty behind the vision of Sister Bryant, our president of the South Florida Adventist Youth Federation, to even engage in this process. I shared some calls we had a couple of months ago that growing up Adventist, we didn't even discuss politics. It wasn't something that was said that you should not do, but it was just a culture. So it is really satisfying to see that adjustment in terms of the culture. Mayor, I want to just drop this question on you, if I may. For the young person who's watching right now, and he sees someone that looks like him in a mayor's position, he sees someone like the sheriff that looks like him or her in the sheriff's position, what suggestions would you give to that person who wants to become an elected official?
Well, let me say this. I can give you a little bit from my own background. I've always been engaged starting off as a member of the 4-H club back in Jamaica. When I got here and I got into college at Broward College, I was a freshman senator for the student government there. I later got involved in political discourse here in Broward County, working with probably the third person Black to be elected in Broward County, Andrew DeGraffenreid Wright. I was at Broward College and walked in as a volunteer to help his campaign. So that's one place you can start. You can start by being a volunteer for a campaign. But even beyond that, if you're not in a place where you can do that, you can start wherever you are. Look to see what you think needs to be changed within your church, within your community, within your school. Get engaged and get involved, because that will help you develop skill sets in order to bring people together and to bring about solutions to issues that you face. And that's really what we do as elected officials. If you're doing what's right, you're going to find issues that need solutions and get them done. And that's what happened in Lauderhill. I actually served as on the political action committee for the Realtors Association. I've been a real estate broker for most of my life and have a company. But I engaged with the Realtors Association on several committees. One of them was the political action committee. And I got involved directly as a result of that. I interviewed all the candidates in 1998 for the city of Lauderhill, commission and mayor. And at the time we had a place called Deepside, not often referred to that anymore, where we had drug dealers selling drugs across the street from the police station and City Hall at 19th Street and 55th Avenue. Anybody who's been around back in those days would remember. And I asked the candidates, including the person who was on the commission who was running to be mayor, and a couple of them were on also, why is that and what can we do about it? And I got to tell you, sadly, the person who won and became mayor said it's not unusual for that kind of stuff to happen in urban areas. He lived in a gated community, much away from that area, so he didn't see how it affected folks. But my wife had a business in that plaza and was driven out pretty much by these drug dealers, because women are not going to come in and see guys selling drugs on the corner, on the street. Let me tell you this, that plaza is now owned by the city of Lauderhill. I got the city to buy it. And we placed police cars there in order to ensure that we didn't have that kind of stuff. And if you look at the 55th, 56th Avenue corridor, you'll find it much different than it was back then. It's being cleaned up quite a bit. You have new houses built in that area. We put programs in place to help the young people in that area. The Boys and Girls Club got more funding and support than ever before. We own the Mission Lakes Plaza, but behind that we had a community, Windermere, that we took over the community center. We bought some of the units. We sold them to people who were going to live in the units and totally change our community. So if you want to be a change agent, find what you think needs to be changed and get engaged and get involved. I also offer internship in my office, and that's something that I've done for most of my life in business and in politics. I allow young people to come in and be engaged in the process. So if there's a young person in college or out of college that wants to join my organization and be an intern, they can send an email to dwholeness@broward.org, and we'll bring them in as a VIP. I actually started at the county, sadly, as an elected official to bring interns in. No one else was doing it. Now I have one person doing it. I have about 10 interns that I rotate in and out all the time, helping them get acclimated with the government, but also they don't have to look to be going in politics. Whatever area they're looking to go into, I try to make connection for them to businesses and in the private sector and also governmental jobs if they're looking to get into that also. So again, start where you are, look to see what needs to be done, and look to see how you can bring solutions and get involved.
Audrey, you had a comment on the point.
Yeah, let me just jump in for Mayor Holness there. If you don't mind just giving us that email just one more time, and if maybe someone on the Facebook Live can just jot that in, because my comment was there's so many things that are going on in the communities, and I've been working in the social justice effort for a little bit now, and I noticed that somehow we're a little disconnected, and it's so beautiful that Broward has taken such a great step. Officer Tony, Sheriff Tony, it's just an amazing thing. You've come to a couple churches that I've been at, and I've heard your whole story, and it's such a beautiful thing. But I think that in our churches, in the Adventist churches, we need to really understand how to grab hold of what's going on right now. I am involved in a couple of different churches, and the social justice effort is, I think we all understand that there's a problem here, and I think that we all agree on that. But when we say we want to put the pedal to the metal, when we start to place our feet in a specific direction, we don't know necessarily where to go. And I think that what we might be able to do as Adventists and as a church is that we may be able to reach out to you guys a little bit more clearly to help, because the Adventist society is actually a really big society, and I think that we can do a lot of good work. But aside from really hearing about it, and it's great to hear about it, it's great to see what's going on and talk and have those conversations, but we really need to start to form some strong connections between the church and the city and Broward. So if you don't mind, definitely give us that email one more time, and we'll put it in our Facebook Live for everyone who's watching and every other platform that we're on. But we definitely need to make a stronger connection. And so when we make a move forward, we're not making a lot of different steps forward, but we have one mind and one purpose, and we can really accomplish a lot, especially if we just kind of come together. So that's what I wanted to kind of shove in there. And Sheriff Tony, if you can give us some information in terms of how we can get in contact with you or how we can connect with some of the great programs that you shared so far, I think that'll be an awesome thing for us. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the shout out. And there's a lot more to cover. I just added it onto kind of our panelist platform. But if you want to look at all the new programs and policies that we put in place since I started 20 months ago, you can go on to sheriff.org/Sheriff Tony. It'll show you all the different programs that we're doing, how reinvested monies out of our law enforcement trust fund to ensure that more Black and brown 501(c)(3)s are getting their fair cut, because that hasn't happened. For those who are not familiar with the law enforcement trust fund, every year we receive a couple $1 million from forfeitures, from crimes, drugs, seizures, etc. And those monies are forwarded back into the sheriff's office to be used and dispersed out into 501(c)(3)s that are engaged in the community. Unfortunately, it hasn't always been fairly dispersed, in my opinion, in that so many Black and brown 501(c)(3)s that could use this money the most has not gotten it. But we put new checks and balances in. One of the things I did with our Department of Community Services just a few months ago is we created a Broward Sheriff's Office youth mentoring program. And that youth mentoring program is now partnering up with all our Divine Nine fraternities and sororities. I earmarked $250,000 to ensure that we have a program that focuses on 8 core skill sets like financial literacy, career development, civic and government affairs, getting the money into the communities. Because look, I left Philadelphia when I was roughly 18 with $500 in my pocket. And I had scraped those monies up from sweeping in barbershops, drilling holes in bowling balls. Well, I got a story I can tell you because I didn't have disposable income. My family didn't have any extra money. And I think that's most Black and brown communities. And so knowing that, I said, now I have access to funds that can help lift somebody up and give them real important skills. The one thing that we can't keep doing in a Black community is to have such a great focus in sports. Too often it's football, basketball, and I'm going to the NFL. Look, I had that same dream. I went to Florida State, played in the national championship, but the reality of it is there's more to life than that. Most of us are not going to make it to the pros. So we need to start developing our young people to think about what it is to be a CPA, to think about what it is to be a lawyer, to think about what it is to take on these other core responsibilities. There was an old commercial that came out years ago. I'm dating myself. It was an NCAA commercial for football. And one of the things that they talked about was everybody is going pro at some point. And they showed a doctor, a lawyer, a police officer. They didn't show one sports athlete. I don't know if some of you guys are nodding, you remember that one. And that hit me core in my heart. I said, man, I made it this far. I have more to do. It can't die out with sports. So we have this youth mentoring program going, but we're also looking at, okay, what else can we build out? You know, I had a chance a few days ago. I sat down, met with Marsha Ellison over at the NAACP. Promise program is still a program that we're supporting and pushing forward, but we need more programming outside of schools, right? When our young kids are out of school, the difference from our white brothers and sisters is disposable income. You know, I know some of my friends who are white, their kids are in some great, phenomenal programs in arts and musics and everything else all year long. They're not left on the streets. They're not left to explore the drug dealer. They're not left to, well, let me break into this house because I'm starving. So we're taking some of these barriers and frustrations off. I want to talk about something that's important. I don't know how young the audience is watching, but I talked about diversifying the agency at the top. That's key, having administrators there. But I also need to be able to hire and recruit more young Black and brown people and women in this profession. And so the door's open, folks. You're a qualified candidate. Come on in. I know how it feels. I know there's a level of I don't want to be a cop. All I see is that they slam Black people on the ground. Do not let that deprive you of a tremendous opportunity in a career that have a outstanding level of benefits, including pensions and everything else. I also have roughly 700 firefighters under my command. I have a fire chief. I also need to recruit in the fire services. This has been a long-standing issue here at the Broward Sheriff's Office, in that we don't have enough Black and brown people working in the fire department. And I have to tell you, the fire department benefits are better than mine.
It is.
Than the law enforcement side. And Dell, Mayor, am I lying?
No. In
They're
fact,
much better.
so here's the deal. You go to school for 2 years to become a firefighter. You start off at $52,000 a year. You work 9 days per month. You get to sleep on the job, eat on the job, do everything on the job because you work 24 hours on, 48 hours off. All right, so 9 days a month. And listen, after 25 years, you're able to retire with 75% of your top 5 years income as your pension. And if you go for 30 years, 5 years, you go in what's called a drop. And in that drop program, your pension that you would have, that 75% of your top 5 years income, goes into an account. And when you finish that 30 years, you got that money. I see firefighters leaving with $500,000, $1.5 million, guys. In addition to that 75, listen, if I came back, I tell folks, I'll be a firefighter. Okay? It's all, and I'm glad Sheriff Tony is there because I've been fighting for this stuff from my days in Lauderhill when I found out how good this thing was. I got to Lauderhill, there were only 4 firefighters out of 105. At Broward County, I got here, there were only 26 out of almost over 700, going towards 800. And guess what? It's been a struggle to get our people in. Sheriff Tony and his new team has looked to see how they can make it so that it's easier for folks to get in. There's still not enough people getting in the fire profession. It is a noble one. And by the way, it's not been a welcoming one because I've been working on this for a while. Before Sheriff Tony got there, I was meeting every month, every 2 months with the top brass at in the fire department. And they were pleasant people, but they weren't doing what needed to be done in order to get our people in. In fact, I'll give you more. The city of Fort Lauderdale has been on a consent decree for more than 30 years. When Congressman Hastings was a judge, they signed a consent decree with the federal government to recruit to 20% the number of firefighters there. There's still only 9% of the firefighters in the city of Fort Lauderdale who are Black. They don't welcome us because it's such a good deal. You got to get in.
If I may, I'm laughing at Catherine because we're both educators. And so we're both thinking, okay, maybe it's time for a career change. I
saw Catherine's face and that.
She got closer.
Yep, I got closer today.
But gentlemen, if you could, this is not one of our questions, but if you could you just talk a little bit, especially as educators, to our middle school and especially our high school students about the importance of achieving good grades while in school and how that sets them up for the future as relates to these different job prospects. Sheriff, you can go ahead and Mayor.
Okay, because there's a pivot point from that conversation to the current question. One of the things that we started to do since I've taken command of the organization, knowing that going back to disposable income, one of the biggest challenges that we've seen when it comes to recruiting minorities, Black and brown folks into the fire services goes back to the inability to pay for the certifications to become a firefighter. It's EMT 1, firefighter 2. so many different courses. On average, it costs about $10,000 to $15,000 just to get the certifications up to become a firefighter. So we started a program called the BSO Legacy Program, where our goal is to get more young folks into our cadet program, Fire Cadet and Police Explorer program, and those who are succeeding in the Fire Cadet program to sponsor them, pay for that certification. Our Fire Cadet program, we're tapping into more minority communities to break these numbers up and bring more diversity. To the points of academia and why it's important to have good grades. I will tell you, you have to be academically sound in this profession. There's a lot of moving parts and policies and things like that, a lot of legislative and legal things that you have to be able to read and adapt to. That starts early on. That starts in middle school, that starts in high school. Everything that you do is progressively building you up for a later future. When I was in middle school, did I know I was going to be the sheriff? No, but I most certainly knew that I wanted to go to high school and I wanted to have a good opportunity to go to a good college. And when I was in college, I knew I wanted to go to grad school. And when I was in grad school, I will be starting back up my doctorate degree. Some people would say, well, wait a minute, man, you're the chief law enforcement officer in the county. You made it. You're good. No, I always challenge yourself because you don't know what other opportunities may present itself. And I'm also an educator. I've been an adjunct college professor in criminal justice now for almost 10 years. And I'm in the classrooms. I work with the students, helping them get their bachelor's degree. And I give them that first, that level of two sides of experience from the academic world and actually being out here and having performed and done the job. You can't dismiss the academics. You most certainly can't. It's not really so much of someone's going to pull your transcript and look at it later on to see what you scored out, whether or not you did this and that. But there's a building block effect that's going to help you be so much more productive when you get to these professional positions.
I'll say this to you. I started college and didn't finish, and that's probably the biggest regret I have in my life. Of all the things that I've done, I pivoted into entrepreneurship, started my own business, and been doing that now for a very long time. Done pretty well, but still regret not finishing. And I put a program in place in Lauderhill called Kapow in several of our schools now, Kids on the Power of Work. And what that does, it brings business and professional people into the classroom to let the kids understand the importance of learning and how what they learn actually apply in real life. Because sometimes there's a disconnect. Why am I having to learn all this stuff? I mean, it don't really matter that much. To them, it may seem at the time. But when you go in and says, look, as a real estate broker, I'm going to have to read contracts and write contracts. Okay, so if you can't read well and write well, you're not going to be able to make it. As simple as that. In terms of getting on with higher education, it's essential that you're able to do that. But no matter what pathway you take, whether you're going to trade or whether you're going to entrepreneurship, you're still going to have to be able to do well academically in order to function well in this society. And even more so now with technology being what it is. So it is critical, young people, that you do that. But also beyond that, you have to look at your character. How do you behave? How do you treat other people? What kind of actions do you take that could get you in trouble that then would block the future for you? Whether you're reckless in your driving, whether you're doing drugs or doing other things that in the end will cause you to have a stain on your record going forward for the rest of your life. Those are things that you also have to be mindful of as you go to school. You're in school. School is your career now. It's your pathway to the future. That's the first career that you have, being a student.
Daryl.
I just wanted to follow up on with something, just one of these hard talks, to especially the young black men and kids who are reading and paying attention to this. As a black man in this country, we are not in a fair, equitable environment to where you will be measured exclusively based on your balance with your white counterpart. I would do you a disservice if I didn't say that. One of the reasons why I continue to go and gain certifications and educations and master's degree was to give me a chance just to be in the same room with somebody of lesser talents and degrees than me. And so it's important to understand that you need to do everything that you can to give yourself an advantage, because there will be people out there who will look at you simply because of the color of your skin and not give you an opportunity. So don't allow anything to slow you down if you know that to be true. I knew this very early on, that I was going to have to do more, work harder, go to take more academics, and do all these things just to get a fair shot. So that's another important part that we cannot ignore, and we have to tell our young people.
And Pastor JD, I got a question for you. Let me go to Catherine quick, and I'm going to come to you.
Okay. All right. So I'll go quickly. So one thing I want to speak to as well, the young people, since we were mentioning about students in school, I have heard a million times this concept when a Black student tries to excel that they're acting white. And sometimes that phrase is used as a stronghold against the advancement of our Black and brown students. So I really want to change the narrative of what it means to be Black, and that Black and excellence are a phrase that can be merged together. And that being Black does not mean you are not excellent, nor does it mean that you need to dim your light so that you can be accepted within the culture. I think we really have to make our advancement part of our culture, the same way our music is, and the same way our fashion is, and in the same way, you know, our curvy bodies are. We have to make, you know, our PhDs a part of our culture, our advancement a part of our culture, being the president a part of our culture, being the CEO a part of our culture. And that failure to do so is a dishonor to our culture. I think a lot of other groups have that kind of down, like in the Asian community, there is the norm of we are here to succeed. The stereotype is if I'm Asian, I'm probably good at math, or if I'm Asian, I'm probably this. And I think we have to find a way within our own group to make Black excellent, if that makes any sense. That there's nothing cute about failure. There's nothing cute about flunking. That being Black is being a boss, and the two can be together. And so that's one thing I want to really throw out there, because I believe that young people often follow culture, and the culture for Black people is not often something that's good to follow. In addition to that, I want to say that really impacting Blackness starts before we're even born, right? And so that's from like in the womb, we got to be hustling, whether it's like the music that we're playing to them or the things that we're saying. And this is all throughout life. So in the education system, making sure you're teaching your kids how to read before they even start kindergarten, because it's very difficult for the teacher to give that one-on-one attention. So give that, you know, special TLC before they even start kindergarten, ensuring that if they are struggling, that you are communicating with the teacher, and that you're making sure you're on top of your kid and all that's happening with them, and that you're following up to see. And this is all throughout. I'm talking from the time they're born, even to the point of, you know, them entering into college, looking at the various scholarships available. Sometimes you have to take out loans, blah, 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 but up to even death. Like in our Black community, there's often no life insurance. And because of that, when people die, it's debt that's handed down versus wealth. And so in other communities, they're constantly building because they constantly get these inheritance, and that's not often seen within our own fold. So really, like, thinking from birth till death, what can we do not only to help ourselves, but to help our communities and pass down something that's better than what exists now. But it's a big thing. And I think we really have to be strategic, because when we look at, I'm talking like real strategic, because it's a real war. Like, I found out recently about what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in the day with Black Wall Street. Learned about that this year. I found out about the history of Central Park. I didn't even know all that Central Park destroyed in order to build itself. I'm talking like we are constantly going against a system that even when we have a Black Wall Street, it's being destroyed. So we have to make everything we touch Black Wall Street now. That way, if they knock down one, at least there are 9 others left behind. But the need for excellence within our community is essential. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking when I was listening to you, Catherine, I heard a hashtag, Black is Boss. That came to me, all right? But Pastor JD, if we could kind of transition, I know we have our listeners out there. As a pastor, as a young pastor, and your name is in the circles is mentioned all the time. what approach, what pastoral approach do you take, will you take, can you take in order to motivate our youth and young adults? Catherine just talked about some things that with Black Wall Street and Tulsa, all these things that she's just unaware of. I know there was a lot in the umbrella, but what approach can our pastors take to engage, to motivate our youth and young adults?
Well, I appreciate you for asking that question. Before I answer it, let me go ahead and just celebrate just one more time, because I think this is just such an awesome opportunity. Ms. Vivian Bryant and your team for putting this together. I just have to applaud what you all have done, because this is one of the things that I think we can do in helping activate our young adults, is modeling for them. Now, look, I'm actually earning my PhD in organizational leadership. I'm a year into this thing. I've learned so very much, because leadership is something that I love. I'm just interested. I'm invested in it. So I'm actually studying that. And one of the things I've learned thus far in this leadership program is that the idea of do as I say and not as I do is a very weak way of trying to activate others to follow. By the way, if you're a leader, that means you have people following you. If you're walking and ain't nobody following you, then you're just on a walk. But if you're going to be a leader and you want people to lead people, you want to follow people, point people in the right direction, there are a couple of things that need to happen. Number one, my suggestion is that you model for them what it looks like. So don't sit here and tell them to get involved and engaged, and then you as the pastor, you as the board member, you as the leader in your church, on that local level, you not be involved, but tell them to do so. Let me just go ahead. I'm 31 years old, y'all. God has blessed me with a lot of experiences thus far in my life. And one thing I have learned thus far, especially in conversation with my friends, people in this generation and those who are coming up behind me, because y'all know there is not just millennials now, we're dealing with Generation Z and all these other successive generations. One thing I've learned is that many of these individuals want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That's why we often find that a lot of young adults aren't necessarily engaged, because if we're talking about it and not doing it, then they're not going to be motivated to show up and participate in something that only invests in and benefits the people in that four-walled church. We want to be a part of community work. We want to be a part of helping people. So I think that the proclivity, the inclination, the desire to participate in things that make an impact in the community is there. So not only model it for them, but give opportunity, give support. You don't have to come up with all the ideas. Ask questions. Allow these young people who are very creative and innovative. By the way, if we look behind us, y'all, and we just do a history lesson, most of the major movements that happened and the huge seismic shifts that have taken place that have benefited our people in the world happen to have been led by young people. Think about it. King was assassinated. That man was in his, early 30s? Like a lot of the time, what we have as it relates to the older generation with wisdom and experience, it's invaluable, but they need people that they can mentor, people they can lead. Young folk got strength. It honestly, it almost takes, by the way, a certain level of what's the word I'm looking for? Of denial, a certain level of almost blind optimism to think I just can't lose. To actually get out there and honestly, that's something that young people bring to the table. Just this positivity that, yo, we can go out there and we can do it. And the idea that, look, I think that young people, you're called to lead. We as leaders need to provide opportunity, space, support, and of course, model it for them. Don't just say go do it without doing it yourself and participating. So there's so much more that can be said there, but I'll pull back and we can continue the conversation. But yes, we have to do that.
So we're actually towards the end of our discussion. What I would like to do, if I may, Mayor, we'll start with you, and the Sheriff will end with you, and I'll pass it back to Sister Bryant. Mayor, can you just kind of give us some words of encouragement? As South Florida Adventist Youth Federation, we're on unfamiliar ground now. We're trying to press forward in terms of thinking out of the box. So can you give us just some words of encouragement moving forward?
Well, let me tell you, thank you so much for this forum. First of all, it is a powerful medium for us to utilize, and we actually need more time than we have been allotted, but that's for another day. Let me say this. You start with where you are. You engage and do what you can and get as many other people to engage with you. I'm going to go back and touch on a few things. One, on criminal justice reform. Get with your police department, get with your city departments, and tell them you want to see them enact reform. And one practical thing they can start with easy is to enforce and enact civil citation for juveniles and utilize that as a tool to build our community. If we empower our young people to go the right pathway, they will certainly be leading us. So that's one big place. I'm going to go to political empowerment quickly, because that's the season we're in right now. If you're not a registered voter, young person, and you're 16 years and older in Florida, register to vote. And you can do it online. You can register to vote online at browardsoe.org. browardsoe.org. That's simple for you to do. You can take that action unilaterally. Also, if you don't have a vote by mail ballot request in, go to that very site, browardsoe.org, and request a vote by mail ballot. Why would you want to do that with all the noise that you're hearing about the mail? One, it gives you the ability to review that ballot before you actually cast your vote, so you can talk to friends and family and others as to what are the amendments that are there, what should you be voting for or not voting for, who should you be voting for or not voting for. Many a times people go in that line to vote, whether it be earlier or on election day, and they have no clue who's to vote for. I mean, I've had people come out and tell me, guess what? I went in, Holiness, and I remember in Obama's election, I only voted for two people. I voted for you and Obama. I says, why? He says, well, you're the only two I knew. I said, well, hold on a minute. You got to spend some more time making sure you know who to vote for. The other thing about vote by mail ballot, it allows you the privacy of vote in your own home, and you drop it in the mail early enough, it will get there. There are measures in place to make sure it gets there. If you don't want to drop it in the mail because you don't trust it, the 22 early voting sites in Broward County will be drop-off sites. So you can drop those in starting October 19th to drop that vote by mail ballot in at the early voting site. Also, get others engaged to vote. I say this, bring 10 to win for what you want. Criminal justice reform is on the ballot, of course. Economic opportunities on the ballot. A minimum wage, a living wage is actually on the ballot as an amendment to the state constitution, where we'll go to $10 per hour and then escalating up to 15 over a few years' time. That's a big place for you to go to do something. I have some items coming on our agenda. And again, if you go to broward.org, you'll be able to look at our meeting, watch our meetings, be informed, hear what is happening. One of the things that I'm bringing on this Tuesday's meeting is an expansion of what we call Ban the Box. That's where you don't look at someone's criminal background to see whether or not they have been arrested or committed a crime, but you looked at the qualifications first and then assess them based on that. I also have a criminal justice police oversight board that came up already, and it will be back for debate on October 6th. So look for that also. What we're looking to do is this, is to examine what's going on with policing, with criminal justice on a broad basis, and bring recommendation for policy changes that are needed in our county. I mentioned earlier about helping your businesses grow. That's a critical thing, to create our own jobs within our own community. The Broward Black Chamber is a fledgling organization that I'd recommend, if you're in business, that you join. If you're a young person, you want to intern with an organization such as that, you can do that also. We'll continue to do the things we need to do. A quick answer to a couple of questions I saw here that are important. The federal government defunding diversity and sensitivity training. Broward County is stepping it up. We're not going to go back. We're not run by the federal government. We are here to answer to you. And we're making sure we expand those programs. As Sheriff Tony spoke to you, we have an office that we've created, an office of racial equity and investment, to ensure that we're doing what needs to be done in Broward County to lift everyone up and not leave anyone behind. Again, become active, see the needs in your community, and participate the best you can.
Sheriff, if I can kind of give you this little premise as we end with you, I want you to pretend that you are talking to a young man, say 16 years old, and he's just disillusioned with the process and with the system. I want you to encourage him in terms of how he can better himself and ways he can kind of move forward?
Well, the first thing I would say is this. I think it kind of been implied here, but it's not heard frequently enough from law enforcement administrators, which is Black lives most certainly matter. It matters to me. It matters to my command staff. They matter to a lot of good people in this profession. And so as you're dealing with these new exposures, whether you see it on TV or if you feel it out in the streets, understand that this is a new world when it comes to the Broward Sheriff's Office and us ensuring that we protect you from anyone who would violate your rights, just like we would do for any other person in this country. And so there is no divided line as to does justice apply for Black people the same as it apply to white people. Under my command, it most certainly does. If you are discouraged and kind of at a point where there's a hopelessness about is there going to be any change, I would have to tell you my own story. In that I grew up in the inner cities of Philadelphia, survived the home invasion, 14 had to shoot someone, 16 my best friend slaughtered in front of me, gunned down on the streets. I left Philadelphia with less than $500 in my pocket, found myself at Florida State, was homeless, fought ways to eat, and making sacrifices from utilities to candles, but yet I am here. I am here for two things that I have not said here, but I'm gonna make sure I close by the grace of God, in having an undying level of perseverance and belief in myself, and that I was not going to yield to discrimination, which I most certainly faced. I was not going to yield to racism, which I most certainly faced. I dealt with it my entire adolescence. I dealt with it in every profession that I had, from teaching at the Department of Corrections, working for the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, working as a police officer in Coral Springs, managing and running my own company, to here now as the sheriff. It continues. But don't allow it to be a crutch for you. You are not the first to endure what you are enduring. Nor was I. Many Black folks have gone through this process. It doesn't make it acceptable, but it also should be a reminder that inside of you is a will that you can tap into because your ancestors have gone through worse and opened up doors that you now have. I'm the first of my kind to walk into this organization, but it took a lot of good people dying to make this possible. It took the assassination of Dr. King and many others to get me to this position. So you keep your head up, you carry on, and don't allow the injustices that may occur to you to define you.
That's right.
And so hang on, keep fighting, persevere. Don't throw in the towel because you never know how close you are to the finish line. And so I would close with that. Stay motivated, stay hungry, and when you get weak, bend the knee. Bend the knee.
Right. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate you so much. What we're going to do, we're going to pass it back to Sister Bryant, and then we'll give our closing prayer. Sister Bryant.
I am so appreciative of the conversation. It was just a lot of information to soak up. I appreciate the mayor.
Sister Bryant, can you all hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
I believe they have a slight delay at the church. Just give her a second.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Let's see here. I think she's talking.
Are you able to hear me now?
We can't hear you, Sister Brian. Like, I see you on my phone. Like, I see you on YouTube that you're talking to us, but we can't hear you in Zoom. No, we can't hear you in Zoom. We can't hear you in Zoom, Sister Brian.
Okay, we're working.
She's talking to us, Brother Henry, but...
Okay, okay. All right. I'm sure that the team is trying to...
Can't hear you. Okay.
All right, if you can just bear with us just a few seconds, I'm sure they'll get that.
connecting right now, it seems. Okay.
Testing.
Well, seems like
Okay, it looks like they're trying to come up now.
Okay. Thankful to you all for getting through it and closing in prayer. I just want to say thank you to the mayor and also to Sheriff Tony. And we look forward to having you back at a time where we can discuss more. Thank you so much for all that you're doing in the community, and we appreciate you. Have a good evening.
And Sister Bryant, before you go.
And one more thing, and thanks, Pastor JD, as well, for spending some time with us today.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Elder.
Yeah, Sister Bryant, we just wanted to affirm you. You know, I do that whenever we're off the air. For all that you're doing, we appreciate you pushing us in this direction. Most of all, we thank you so much for your leadership as the president of the South Florida Adventist Youth Federation. Thank you, and we love you.
And we love you too. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.
All right, take care.
Bye, guys.
big is happening on November 7th, 2020, and you don't want to miss it. The Southeastern Conference Women's Ministries Department is celebrating its 30th anniversary. The theme is 30 years of excellent service. The best is yet to come. And the keynote speaker for this grand occasion is none other than Chaplain Linda Pinnock, founder of Living the Divine Purpose Ministries. Join us online for a full day of interactive programming with powerful preaching, great music, special tributes, and so much more. In the afternoon, gospel recording artist Miranda Curtis will be live in concert, followed by an anniversary reception and celebratory toast. Registration opens September 8, 2020 to receive your personalized 30th anniversary gift box while supplies last for a donation of just $30. For more details, visit www.secsda.org or www.facebook.com/secwomen. We want to share this celebration with you, so mark your calendars now.
Wednesday of each month from 12 to 3, we're open to serve. All you gotta do is drive in, pop your trunk, and the volunteers will put your food inside.
Southeastern family, we are blessed to have one in our midst that has taken the resources of technology and used it to expand his evangelistic ministry. Pastor Arnaldo Cruz, pastor of the Spanish Pilgrims Hialeah Church located in Miami, Florida. We are blessed to have him where he has been able to receive now or have 100,000 followers on YouTube. Pastor Arnaldo Cruz, thank you for taking a new paradigm and using it to increase the kingdom of God. May God continue to bless you in your ministry. So now on behalf of our president, Pastor Gregory Mack, our executive secretary, Dr. Michael Owusu, our CFO, Sister Cherie Brown, all of the departmental directors and office staff, all of the pastors and teachers and workers and all lay persons of the Southeastern Conference, we want to say to you, thank you for being a blessing to mankind. May God continue to bless you in your ministry.
Something big is happening on November 7th, 2020, and you don't want to miss it. The Southeastern Conference Women's Ministries Department is celebrating its 30th anniversary. The theme is 30 years of excellent service, the best is yet to come. And the keynote speaker for this grand occasion is none other than Chaplain Linda Pinnock, founder of Living the Divine Purpose Ministries. Join us online for a full day of interactive programming with powerful preaching, great music, special tributes, and so much more. In the afternoon, gospel recording artist Miranda Curtis will be live in concert, followed by an anniversary reception and celebratory toast. Registration opens September 8, 2020 to receive your personalized 30th anniversary gift box while supplies last for a donation of just $30. For more details, visit www.secsda.org or www.facebook.com/secwomen. We want to share this celebration with you, so mark your calendars now.